Fursuer. The night sky above Beverly Hills shimmered with city lights that looked almost unreal, like diamonds scattered across dark velvet. Beneath them, people dressed in perfection strolled past glowing storefronts and marble sidewalks, their laughter light, their watches heavy. At the corner of Rodeo Drive, a building gleamed brighter than the rest. Its name etched in gold across glass doors read, La Lumière, a French restaurant whispered to be the most exclusive in Los Angeles. Inside, chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks, and violins whispered through the air as waiters glided between tables draped in ivory linen. Every movement was precise, every smile rehearsed, and into this world of quiet elegance stepped a man who didn't fit the picture. 31, he was tall, towering actually. His shoulders looked like they'd been carved out of a mountain, and his simple gray t-shirt clung to a frame that could have carried the weight of the world. His jeans were clean but creased, his sneakers worn yet comfortable. The moment he walked through the door, conversations paused. Champagne glasses froze midair. Heads turned, not out of admiration but out of quiet judgment. A whisper rippled through the room. "Who's that? Did he walk into the wrong place? He looks familiar." But no one recognized him for who he really was. 54. At the reception desk stood Emma, the head waitress. Her uniform was immaculate, her posture flawless, her expression a mix of professionalism and superiority. She had worked at La Lumière for 6 years, and in that time she'd learned one lesson. People who looked expensive were treated with respect. Those who didn't were treated with distance. When her eyes landed on the man in the t-shirt, her polite smile faltered. She forced it back quickly, but her tone sharpened like a knife hidden in silk. "Good evening, sir. May I help you?" The man smiled, a warm, genuine smile that softened the hard lines of his face. "Yes," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I'd like a table for one, please." Emma blinked. "For one?" she repeated as if the concept itself was strange in a place like this. Her eyes flicked down at his sneakers again. "I'm afraid we're quite full tonight. Do you have a reservation?" "No," he said calmly, still smiling. "But I don't mind waiting." Her lips tightened. "I see, and may I ask if you're aware of our pricing?" The room seemed to hold its breath. At a nearby table, a businessman in a designer suit smirked. A woman in pearls tilted her head, watching with curiosity. Emma leaned forward slightly, her voice now colder. "This is a fine dining establishment, sir. Our tasting menu starts at $480 per person, excluding wine pairing." But the man didn't flinch. He simply nodded. "That's fine." Emma hesitated. He wasn't reacting how she expected. Most people, at least the ones who didn't belong, would have backed off, embarrassed or defensive. But this man stood with quiet confidence, as if he'd seen this kind of attitude 100 times before. Finally, she sighed through her nose. "One moment, please," she said curtly, turning to check her computer screen. As she pretended to scroll, her colleague Ryan leaned close. "Who is that guy?" he whispered. "No idea," she replied under her breath. "Probably someone lost. Look at him, t-shirt, sneakers. This isn't a burger joint." Ryan snickered softly. "Want to bet he'll leave in 5 minutes?" Emma smirked. "He won't even last 2. But when she turned back, the man was still standing there, calm, patient, unbothered. "Sir," she said, "I'm sorry, but without a reservation, we can't accommodate you at this moment." "That's all right," he said. "I'll wait." She blinked again. "Wait? Sir, our tables are booked for hours ahead. Perhaps you'd prefer a place more casual. There's a diner across the street." Her tone dripped with fake kindness, but the insult was clear. The man smiled faintly, as if he'd heard this kind of tone many times before. He didn't argue. He simply nodded. "Thank you," he said softly, then stepped aside to sit on a small bench near the entrance. He sat quietly, hands folded, while the violins continued to play. But what the diners didn't notice was the faint smirk tugging at the corners of his lips, the kind of smile that belonged to someone who knew something they didn't. Meanwhile, behind the counter, "Can you believe that guy?" Emma muttered to Ryan. "People like him think money is casual. Wait till he sees the menu." Ryan laughed quietly. "Maybe he's just trying to impress someone." Emma rolled her eyes. "Yeah, if he even gets a table." She didn't know that her judgmental words were being overheard. At the far end of the restaurant, an older man with silver hair and an elegant watch raised his eyebrow. He whispered something to the maitre d'. The maitre d' nodded discreetly, eyes flicking toward the tall stranger on the bench. Minutes later, a voice broke the tension. "Excuse me," said the maitre d', walking up to the man. "Sir, we have a table ready for you." Emma's head snapped up. "What?" she whispered. "Who approved that?" But it was too late. The tall man, still calm, still smiling, stood up and followed the maitre d' into the dining hall. As he passed Emma, he nodded politely. "Thank you," he said softly. Her jaw tightened, but she forced a smile. "Of course, sir," she said, her tone stiff. The table was at the center of the restaurant, a spot usually reserved for high-profile guests. As he sat down, conversations resumed, but eyes lingered. He looked around, appreciating the chandeliers, the golden plates, the flawless arrangement of flowers. Everything was designed to impress. A new waiter, David, young and kind-eyed, approached with a menu. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to La Lumiere." "Thanks," the man said warmly. "You can call me Shaq," David blinked. "Shaq, as in Shaquille O'Neal?" The man grinned. "That's the one." David's eyes widened. "Whoa, I'm sorry, sir, I didn't realize." "It's an honor." "No worries," Shaq said, chuckling softly. "I'm just here for a quiet dinner." But not everyone was quiet. Across the room, Emma froze mid-step. She'd heard the name. Her face paled. 45, Shaquille O'Neal. The basketball legend? The investor? The philanthropist? The guy who owns multiple businesses and restaurants across the country? Her mind raced. She glanced toward the maitre d', who looked like he was suppressing a smile. The realization hit her slowly and painfully. The man she had looked down on, the one she had tried to send to a casual place, was not only one of the wealthiest, most respected athletes alive. He was also part owner of several luxury restaurants, including, though she didn't know it yet, this one. Shaq ordered simply grilled salmon, mashed potatoes, and water. He didn't demand anything special, didn't act like a celebrity. He smiled at the servers, thanked the staff, and treated everyone with kindness. But when his food arrived, the restaurant owner himself, Mr. Caldwell, a composed man in a tailored navy suit, walked out of the private office at the back. He approached Shaq with a warm grin. "My friend," he said, extending a hand. "You came early tonight. We weren't expecting you until next week." Emma froze again. "Friend?" She mouthed silently. Shaq laughed softly, shaking Caldwell's hand. "Yeah, I got hungry," he joked. "You know how it is," Caldwell chuckled. "I'll have the chef send over something special. You own part of this place. You should taste our new recipe." Emma's tray nearly slipped from her hand. Khadid, the whispers began instantly. "He owns the restaurant?" Wait, didn't she just insult him? Unbelievable. Emma's ears burned. Her throat went dry. She turned toward Ryan, whose smirk had vanished completely. Caldwell noticed her, then turned to Shaq. "Did Emma take good care of you?" Shaq paused for a moment, his deep eyes resting on her pale face. He smiled kindly. "She was honest," he said slowly. "I appreciate honesty." Caldwell looked puzzled but nodded. "Well, that's good to hear," he said warmly. 47. As the evening went on, the restaurant returned to its rhythm, but the energy had shifted. Emma moved through the dining hall with trembling hands, trying to act composed. Inside, she was drowning in regret. Shaq, meanwhile, enjoyed his meal quietly, chatting with David and tipping generously. When he finally stood to leave, he turned back toward Emma. "Thank you for your service," he said politely. Emma's lips trembled. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize." Shaq stopped her gently with a raised hand. "You don't have to apologize," he said softly. "Just remember, never judge someone by how they look. You might be standing in front of the person who signs your paycheck." And with that, he walked out, calm, smiling, leaving the entire restaurant silent behind him. Pandurcourt. The next morning, sunlight poured through the high windows of La Lumiere, touching the polished marble floors with a golden glow. It was quiet, too quiet. Only the sound of coffee machines and silverware echoed faintly from the prep area. Emma stood at the counter, her hands trembling slightly as she wiped a glass that was already spotless. She hadn't slept. The events of last night looped in her mind again and again. The casual smile on Shaquille O'Neal's face the moment she realized who he was, and the sound of her own voice asking him if he could afford to eat there. Now that she knew the truth, that he owned the restaurant, every memory burned with embarrassment. She had built her entire professional image on confidence, precision, and control. Yet in a single moment she had been exposed not as confident but arrogant. "Emma?" She snapped back to reality. It was Ryan, her coworker. He looked just as uneasy. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said quickly, but her voice cracked. Ryan sighed. Words already out. "The staff's been talking all morning. The owner's coming in early." Her heart sank. "Mr. Caldwell?" she asked quietly. Ryan nodded. "Yeah, and Shaq's coming too." 52. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "He's coming back?" "Apparently he's having a meeting here today. Something about expansion. Don't know the details, but—" He hesitated. "You might want to be ready." She nodded, setting the glass down with shaking fingers. For years, she had been proud of how she could read people, manage guests, and control chaos. But now she felt like the chaos itself. 10 by noon, the restaurant buzzed with movement. Staff members hurried to polish cutlery and adjust chairs. The scent of roasted garlic and butter drifted from the kitchen. Everything had to be perfect. At exactly 12:30 p.m., the door opened, and he walked in. Shaquille O'Neal's presence filled the room before his voice did. Dressed in a tailored navy suit this time, he carried the same easy confidence, but his eyes were sharper, observing, calm, and unmistakably in control. The staff went silent. Even the background music seemed to fade. "Morning, everyone," Shaq said warmly, breaking the tension. A few people muttered greetings, bowing slightly as if royalty had entered the room. Emma froze behind the counter, her heart thudding in her chest. Shaq turned his head slowly and met her gaze. For a moment the world seemed to stop. He smiled politely. "Good morning, Emma." She swallowed hard. Good morning, sir." The sound of that word, sir, felt strange on her tongue. Yesterday she had spoken to him like he didn't belong. Today, she couldn't look him in the eye. Shaq nodded and walked past her toward the private dining area, where Mr. Caldwell was waiting. But before entering, he paused. "Could you bring me a black coffee?" he asked gently. Emma blinked. "Of course." As she turned toward the machine, Ryan whispered, "You okay?" "I'll be fine," she murmured. "I need to be." She carefully prepared the coffee, every motion deliberate. When she walked toward the private room, she could feel every pair of eyes in the restaurant on her. Inside, Shaq sat beside Caldwell, papers spread before them. Their voices were low but friendly. "Come in," Caldwell said as she knocked softly. She stepped in and placed the cup in front of Shaq. "Here you go, sir." He looked up, smiling. "Thank you." Her lips parted, but the words she wanted to say, the apology she'd rehearsed all morning, caught in her throat. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Emma," he said calmly, "do you have a minute?" She froze. "Yes, sir," Caldwell nodded. "Go ahead, Emma, take your time. I'll step out for a call." He left, closing the door gently behind him. Now it was just her and Shaq. For a few seconds, neither spoke. The silence was heavy but not hostile, just expectant. Finally, she exhaled and spoke, her voice shaking. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. I shouldn't have spoken to you the way I did yesterday. It was unprofessional and wrong." Shaq leaned back, his eyes steady. "Why did you talk to me that way?" She hesitated. I don't know. Maybe because I thought—" She trailed off, ashamed. "I judged you. I thought you didn't belong here, and I was wrong." He nodded slowly, his tone even. "You're not the first person to do that." She blinked. "I get it all the time," he continued. "People see the clothes, the shoes, the size, and they think they know everything. Some think I'm just an athlete. Some think I'm just muscle. But you know what I've learned?" Emma shook her head. "That how people treat others says more about them than it does about the person they're judging." Her throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but he continued softly. "I grew up poor, Emma. Couldn't afford much. My mom worked double shifts just to feed us. I know what it's like to be looked down on because of how you look. That's why I never judge anyone. Rich, poor, dressed up, dressed down. I treat everyone the same." His words hit her harder than any scolding could have. "I understand," she whispered. "You're right. I've worked here for years and I thought I was protecting the restaurant's image. But really I was protecting my own ego. Shaq smiled faintly. You're honest now. That's good. He leaned forward slightly, his tone softening. Emma, you're good at your job. I noticed how you manage the staff, how sharp your eye is for detail. You care about this place. That's why I'm not angry. She looked up, surprised. But I do want you to remember something. He paused, his gaze firm but kind. Respect is free. It costs nothing to give, but it changes everything when you do. Her eyes watered. I'll remember that, sir. He stood up, towering over the table, but his presence wasn't intimidating. It was comforting. Good, he said with a smile. Now let's get back to work. I have a few ideas for this place, and I think you could help. Emma blinked, confused. Help me? He nodded. Yeah. You've been here long enough to know what works and what doesn't. I'm expanding La Lumiere into 3 more cities. Caldwell told me you're the best floor manager he's ever had. Her mouth fell open slightly. He said that? Yep, Shaq said with a grin. So if you're interested, I want you to help train new staff at the next branch. Tears welled in her eyes. After what I said to you? Shaq shrugged lightly. You made a mistake. You owned it. That's rare these days, she covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Thank you. I won't let you down, he smiled warmly. I know you won't. Just then Caldwell re-entered, smiling as if he already knew what had happened. Everything all right? He asked. Shaq chuckled. Better than all right. We're building something bigger. 42. As Emma stepped out of the room, the other staff members looked at her curiously. She didn't say much, just smiled quietly and got back to work. But something inside her had shifted. That day, she didn't walk with pride born of superiority. She walked with humility strengthened by purpose. Ryan nudged her as she passed. So, what happened? He whispered. She smiled faintly. I got a second chance. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Shaq stood at the restaurant's front doors. He watched the staff moving gracefully, the tables filled with laughter, the light glinting off polished glasses. He smiled to himself. Sometimes the richest lessons don't come from boardrooms or business meetings. They come from moments when pride meets humility and kindness wins. A few months had passed since that unforgettable day at La Lumiere. The restaurant had returned to its usual rhythm, violins, laughter, and the soft clinking of glasses. But something had changed. Not in the decor, not in the menu, but in the people. And at the center of that change was Emma. Where she once carried herself with rigid pride, she now moved with calm confidence. Her voice was warmer, her smile real. The same customers who once feared her cold professionalism now greeted her by name. Every time she helped a guest, she remembered Shaq's words echoing in her head. Respect is free. It costs nothing to give, but it changes everything when you do. Q35. It was a Saturday morning when Mr. Caldwell approached her with news that would again change her life. He smiled as he placed a sleek black folder on the counter. Pack your bags, Emma, he said. Her eyes widened. Sir? The new La Lumiere, Atlanta branch opens next month. Shaq wants you there as part of the opening management team. Her heart skipped. Me? Yes, you. You'll train the new staff and help set the service standards. You've earned it. Emma stood speechless for a moment, then smiled through a rush of emotion. I won't let you or Mr. O'Neill down. Caldwell chuckled. Just keep doing what you've been doing. That's all he ever asked. 10. A month later, she stepped off the plane in Atlanta, Georgia, greeted by humid air and a skyline bathed in gold. The new restaurant sat downtown, sleek, modern, and twice the size of Beverly Hills. But it wasn't the chandeliers or marble floors that impressed her. It was the team waiting inside. Young servers, bartenders and managers, all eager but inexperienced. Some looked nervous, others overly confident. She saw herself in both types. All right, team, she began with a firm but friendly tone. I'm Emma, and I'm here to help you make this place shine. A waiter in the back raised his hand. Are you like the big boss? Emma smiled. No, the big boss is taller and much nicer, she said, and everyone laughed. For the next 2 weeks, Emma trained the staff tirelessly. She taught them how to pour wine without spilling, how to read guests' moods, how to balance grace and efficiency. But most importantly, she taught them respect. Never assume, she told them. Every person who walks through those doors deserves the same care, whether they're wearing diamonds or denim. The team listened. Some nodded. Others looked skeptical. One waitress, Lily, a 21-year-old college student, whispered to her friend, "She's nice, but she takes it too seriously." Emma overheard but smiled. That's okay, she thought. They'll learn, just like I did. Opening night came faster than expected. The restaurant buzzed with energy, the kitchen alive with shouts and sizzling pans. Outside, luxury cars lined the street. Guests poured in, celebrities, investors, families, and locals curious to see what Shaq's restaurant was all about. Shaq himself arrived late, wearing a crisp suit and that same easy smile. Cameras flashed as he greeted the crowd, shaking hands and laughing deeply. When he entered the dining hall, he spotted Emma immediately. "There's my star," he said warmly, giving her a quick side hug. Emma blushed. "Welcome to your new place, sir." "Everything's ready." "Good," he said, glancing around. "You did this. I'm proud of you." To 45. The evening went perfectly at first. Tables filled, compliments flowed, and guests marveled at the service. But around 9 p.m., a small commotion broke out near table 12. A customer in a tailored gray suit, obviously wealthy, snapped his fingers at a young waiter. "Excuse me, I've been waiting 15 minutes for my drink." "This is ridiculous." The waiter, nervous, stammered, "I'm so sorry, sir, Don't apologize," the man cut him off. "Just do your job, unbelievable." Emma was across the room when she noticed. Without hesitation, she walked over. "Good evening, sir," she said calmly. "I'm the manager. Is there a problem?" The man turned sharply. "Yes, there's a problem. Your staff is incompetent." 15. Emma glanced at the trembling waiter, then back to the guest. "I understand, and I apologize for the wait." "We'll have your order right away." Her tone was calm, too calm for the man's ego. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. She smiled politely. "No, sir, but I promise we treat everyone here with the same respect." That answer caught him off guard. He opened his mouth to argue and then stopped. Something in her eyes disarmed him. "Fine," he muttered. "Just hurry up." As she walked back to the counter, Shaq, who had been observing from across the room, approached quietly. "You handled that well," he said. Emma smiled faintly. "I learned from the best." 40, but the night wasn't over. Around 10 p.m., as the rush slowed, a young couple entered, tired, clearly not dressed for the high-class crowd. The hostess hesitated. Emma caught the moment instantly. "Please," she said, stepping forward. "Right this way." The hostess blinked. "But they don't have—" "It's fine," Emma interrupted gently. "We'll find them a table." The couple looked surprised and grateful. As they sat down, the young woman whispered, "Thank you. We thought we couldn't afford this place." Emma smiled. "Don't worry about that. Tonight's on the house." Shaq, who had been quietly watching, grinned. "You just stole my move," he teased later. Emma laughed softly. Guess the lesson stuck. 05. After closing time, the staff gathered in the empty dining room, exhausted but buzzing with pride. Shaq stood at the center, his deep voice carrying across the marble floor. "Everyone did great tonight," he began. "But there's something I want you all to remember." He looked around, meeting each pair of eyes. "This restaurant isn't just about food. It's about people. Every person who walks in here brings a story, and you never know what they're going through. That's why kindness isn't just service. It's strength." He turned to Emma. "And this woman right here reminded me of that truth, because once upon a time she made a mistake. And instead of hiding from it, she learned." The staff applauded softly. Emma's eyes glistened. 35. Later, as everyone left, Shaq and Emma stood outside beneath the city lights. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "people think success is about power or money. But really, it's about how you treat people when no one's watching." Emma nodded. "I used to think this job was about rules and perfection, but it's really about empathy." He smiled. "Exactly. You're ready for more?" "More?" she asked. Shaq grinned. "You didn't think this was the end, did you? We're opening in Chicago next, and I want you to lead it." Her mouth fell open. "Lead as in?" "As in general manager," he said simply. The night air carried the hum of traffic and a distant saxophone from the street corner. Emma looked out at the lights, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. "From waitress to manager," she whispered. "I never thought I'd come this far," Shaq chuckled. "You came this far because you changed, not for others, but for yourself." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars glimmer above the skyline. "You know, Emma," Shaq said softly, "a lot of people judge by what they see. But the best ones? They look deeper, and when they do, they find gold where others saw dust." Emma smiled, eyes shining. "Thank you, sir," he nodded. "Just keep paying it forward." Wamamuro, Chicago, a city that never truly sleeps, its skyline etched in steel and light, its heartbeat carried in the rumble of trains and the whisper of ambition, and in the heart of downtown, a new name glowed above polished glass doors: La Lumiere, Chicago. The opening had been a triumph. Articles praised the elegance, the fusion of culture and class, and the restaurant's unexpected warmth. But beneath the sparkle, Emma knew the hardest part was only beginning. Running a restaurant wasn't about chandeliers and five-star menus. It was about people, unpredictable, emotional, and flawed. 35. She arrived before sunrise every day, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp yet kind. She greeted chefs, checked inventory, reviewed table settings, and always made time for the people around her. But not everyone liked taking orders from someone who used to be a waitress, especially not Daniel, the assistant manager. Daniel was tall, charming, and ambitious. He'd worked in fine dining for years and believed he was born for management. When Shaq and Caldwell promoted Emma instead of him, his polite smile masked a growing resentment. At first, it showed in subtle ways: missed memos, small delays, quiet eye rolls. But over time, it turned into something worse. 05. One busy Friday evening, the restaurant was full. Couples clinked wine glasses, laughter floated through the air, and the kitchen hummed like a symphony. Emma moved gracefully between tables, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Then a waiter rushed over, pale-faced. "Ma'am, table 8. They're upset about the bill. They said the price is wrong." Emma nodded. "I'll handle it." When she approached the guest, a well-dressed man with a loud voice slammed the bill on the table. "This is outrageous. You charged me twice for the entree." She calmly examined the receipt. "I see. Let me check with our system, sir. I'll fix it immediately." As she walked to the register, she found Daniel standing there and arms folded, smirking slightly. "Problem?" he asked innocently. "Table 8. Double charge," she replied. Daniel shrugged. "Not my mistake. Maybe the waiter messed up. Or maybe you did when you handled the order." His tone wasn't disrespectful, but it carried something worse: quiet defiance. Emma didn't respond. She simply corrected the bill and returned it with an apology and complimentary dessert. The guests softened instantly, impressed by her composure. But the next morning, Daniel's report to the team painted a different picture. "She messed up the order," he said casually over breakfast briefing. "Don't worry, I fixed it." The staff exchanged awkward glances. Emma walked in just in time to hear the end of his sentence. "Is that so?" she asked calmly. Daniel straightened. "Oh, just explaining what happened last night." "I see," she said evenly. "Then next time, let's make sure the explanation is accurate." Her voice was calm, too calm, but her eyes said what her tone didn't. The room fell silent. That evening, she called Daniel into her office. He walked in with his usual confident smirk. "Yes, ma'am?" "Sit," she said gently. He sat. "Daniel," she began, "I know you're good at what you do, but good isn't enough if your heart's not in the right place. Leadership isn't about showing who's in charge, it's about lifting others up." He scoffed lightly. "I've been in this business long enough to know that kindness doesn't pay the bills." Emma leaned forward. "No, but disrespect will cost you more than any bill ever could." His smirk faded. "You think Shaq built this company by humiliating people?" "No. He built it by remembering where he came from. You forget that and you lose everything." Daniel stared at her, speechless for once. Later that week, a new storm hit. A major food critic, the Chicago Review-Journal's most feared, had reserved a table under a fake name. The staff didn't know it was him, but Emma had a feeling. She spotted the subtle signs: The quiet observation, the phone notes, the slow bites. She told the team quietly, "Table 3, treat it like the president's here." Everything went smoothly. Until Daniel decided to impress. Without consulting her, he personally approached the critic with a flourish. "How's your meal tonight, sir?" The man raised an eyebrow. "It's fine, thank you." Daniel grinned. "I hope it's better than our competition across the street." "We're not like them. We actually know how to season food properly." The critic's fork froze midair. Emma, across the room, saw it happen. 25. When the critic left early without dessert, she knew the review would hurt. 2 days later, the headline confirmed it. La Lumiere Chicago, elegant place, arrogant management. Her chest tightened reading it. One careless moment, one ego-driven sentence, had undone months of hard work. She didn't blame Daniel publicly, but Shaq would see it, and so would Caldwell. That evening, after closing, she gathered the staff. "I take full responsibility," she said firmly. "We failed to represent what this restaurant stands for: humility, kindness, respect. This won't happen again." Her tone wasn't angry. It was steady, like a captain in a storm. Even Daniel looked uneasy. That night she stayed late, reviewing every system, every note, every staff rotation. Around midnight, a familiar deep voice broke the silence. "You're still here?" She looked up. Shaq stood at the doorway wearing a simple hoodie, his massive frame outlined by the soft kitchen light. "Mr. O'Neill," she said, startled. "I didn't expect you," he chuckled. "I read the review." Her shoulders slumped. "I'm so sorry." "I tried." He raised a hand. "Relax, you think I never got a bad review?" "Happens to everyone," she sighed. "Still, it hurts." "We worked so hard," Shaq nodded. "That's what leadership is, Emma. It's not about avoiding failure. It's about owning it." He walked closer, leaning against the counter. "You handled it right," he continued. "You didn't blame anyone. That's what makes you different. A true leader takes the hit so their team can grow." She looked up at him, her eyes glistening. "But what if the team stops believing in me?" Shaq smiled gently. "Then you remind them why they believed in you in the first place. You show up. You work harder, and you don't let ego run the kitchen." She nodded slowly. He glanced at her desk. "What's that?" She smiled faintly. "My plan for retraining. I'm holding workshops next week on communication and service ethics. Every team member, including me," he grinned. "That's my girl, fixing it from the inside." The following week, Emma gathered the entire team. The air was tense. She stood before them, not as their boss, but as their teammate. "I'm not here to lecture you," she began. "I'm here to remind you of who we are. This place was built by people who believed in second chances, by someone who believed in me when I didn't deserve it. And I want to do the same for you." Her voice cracked slightly, but never wavered. "If you work here, you work with heart. If you make a mistake, own it. And if you see someone fall, lift them. That's what makes us different." There was silence and then soft clapping. It started with a few staff. Then the entire room. Even Daniel stood, his head lowered. 20. After the meeting, he approached her quietly. "I was wrong," he admitted. "About you. About everything. I wanted your position so bad I forgot why I started in this business. To make people feel seen." Emma smiled softly. "Then you're already a better manager than yesterday." He nodded, eyes misty. "Thank you for not firing me," she chuckled. "Thank Shaq for teaching me grace." 35. A month later, the critic returned, this time anonymously again. But what he found was different. Warm service, genuine smiles. A team that moved as one. 2 weeks later, a new headline appeared. La Lumiere Chicago redeems itself, a masterclass in humility. The article praised the management's authenticity and the restaurant's transformation. When Shaq called to congratulate her, his words were simple. "Now that's the kind of comeback I like to see." 25. As the camera of life panned out, Emma, once the judgmental waitress, now stood as the heart of an empire built on kindness. She looked around at her bustling restaurant, eyes shimmering with pride. Every mistake, every apology, every sleepless night and had led to this moment. She whispered to herself, "Respect is free, but it's also priceless." It was a quiet winter evening in Chicago. Snowflakes drifted lazily down, coating the busy sidewalks in a soft white glow. The glass doors of La Lumiere, Chicago, gleamed warmly from within, offering a haven of light and laughter against the cold. Inside, everything was running perfectly. Waiters moved like clockwork. Chefs plated dishes with precision, and guests smiled under the chandeliers. At the center of it all stood Emma, confident, composed, and radiant. She was no longer just a manager. She was a leader in every sense. Her calm voice guided the team. Her humility inspired them. And tonight she was preparing for an important guest, Shaquille O'Neal himself. 35. Shaq was coming to celebrate the one-year anniversary of the Chicago branch, a year that had turned La Lumiere into a national name for hospitality done with heart. The entire team buzzed with excitement. "He's really coming?" one waiter whispered. "Of course, Lily," now the new floor supervisor said proudly. He wouldn't miss it. Emma's his favorite. At exactly 7 p.m. the doors opened, and there he was. Dressed in a classic black suit, Shaq's massive frame filled the entrance, his signature smile warming the entire room. Applause rippled through the restaurant. Even guests turned to see. Emma stepped forward, smiling. "Welcome back, sir," Shaq grinned. "You've outdone yourself again." 5. Dinner went smoothly. The food was perfect, the service flawless. But amid the celebration, Emma noticed something. A new waiter at the back, standing awkwardly near the drink station. He looked lost. She approached quietly. "First night?" she asked gently. The young man, maybe 19 or 20, nodded nervously. "Yes, ma'am. I just started. I'm trying not to mess up," Emma smiled. "What's your name?" "Marcus," he said softly. "I've never worked in a place like this before." "Well, Marcus," she said kindly, "I've been exactly where you are. You'll do fine. Just remember, treat everyone like they matter." "That's the secret," he smiled shyly. "Thank you, ma'am." She handed him a napkin. "And breathe. It's just food and people, ma'am, but done with heart." Later that night, as the crowd thinned, Shaq stood to speak. The entire restaurant quieted instantly. He raised his glass. "1 year ago," he began, his deep voice echoing softly. "This place opened as a dream. But it's not the walls or the chandeliers that made it special. It's the people." He turned toward Emma. "This woman right here turned a restaurant into a family. She taught others what real success looks like, not in dollars, but in dignity." The staff applauded, some with tears in their eyes. Emma, overwhelmed, stood beside him. "Thank you, sir. But everything I learned from you," he chuckled. "Then I guess we both did something right." 5. After the applause faded, Shaq pulled her aside near the window overlooking the snowy street. "You've built something special," he said. "I couldn't be prouder." "Thank you," she replied softly. "It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it," he nodded. "You've come a long way from the girl who judged a man for wearing sneakers." She laughed quietly, a little embarrassed. "Don't remind me." "No, I will," he said playfully. "Because that moment, that mistake, started all this. Sometimes our biggest failures are just doors waiting to open." 2:35. As they spoke, Marcus accidentally dropped a tray near the bar. Glasses shattered and the restaurant froze. Emma didn't hesitate. She walked over calmly, knelt down beside him, and began picking up the pieces. "I'm so sorry," Marcus stammered. "I didn't mean to—" "Hey," she interrupted softly. "It's fine, breathe, accidents happen." Other waiters rushed to help. Within seconds, the floor was clean again. The guests relaxed. Shaq watched the scene from afar, a proud smile spreading across his face. "She really learned," he murmured. After closing, the restaurant dimmed to a golden quiet. Only Shaq and Emma remained seated at a corner booth. "I remember the first time I walked into your old place," he said with a laugh. "You looked at me like I didn't belong," Emma winced. "Guilty," he chuckled. "But look at you now, making sure everyone belongs." She smiled softly. "You know, I think about that night often. If you hadn't been patient with me, if you just walked away, I'd still be that person, proud, cold, and blind." Shaq leaned forward. "You were never blind. You just hadn't opened your eyes yet." She stared out the window, snowflakes melting against the glass. "Why me, though? Why give me a second chance?" He shrugged lightly. "Because someone once did the same for me." Her eyes widened slightly. Really? Yes, he said, his voice softening. Back when I was young and angry at the world, I snapped at a restaurant manager who treated me kindly. Instead of firing me, she sat me down and said, "Kindness isn't weakness, Shaquille. It's strength." He paused, eyes distant with memory. That line stuck with me forever. I guess I was just passing it forward. 50. For a long moment, silence hung between them. The kind of silence that feels full, not empty. Finally, Emma spoke. "Then I'll do the same. Every new staff member, every lost kid, every impatient customer, I'll pass it forward too." Shaq smiled, proud. That's all I ever wanted to hear. He stood up to leave, pulling on his coat. "You know, I might just name a dish after you. Emma's Redemption. What do you think?" She laughed through tears. "As long as it comes with extra kindness on the side." He chuckled. "Always." 10. The next morning, Emma arrived early as usual. She brewed coffee, reviewed notes, and checked reservations. Marcus entered a few minutes later. Nervous but determined, she greeted him warmly. "Morning, Marcus." "Morning, ma'am. Ready for day 2? He nodded. "I think so. I won't mess up this time." She smiled. "Don't worry about messing up. Just focus on lifting people up." As the first guests walked in, she watched Marcus greet them politely, shaky but smiling. It reminded her of herself once, years ago, when she thought perfection mattered more than compassion. Now she knew better. 35. That evening, as the restaurant filled with laughter, a small framed plaque was unveiled near the entrance. It read, "Respect is free, but it's also priceless." SO&EL guests paused to read it. Some smiled. Some nodded thoughtfully. Emma looked at the plaque with quiet pride. Next to her, Shaq's message glowed softly, a promise, a legacy, a reminder. As the camera of life panned out one final time, the restaurant shimmered under its chandeliers, filled with people of every kind, rich and poor, young and old, dining, laughing, sharing stories. And somewhere in that glow stood Emma, once the arrogant waitress, now the heart of an empire built on empathy. Shaq's words echoed one last time in her mind. "Respect is free. It costs nothing to give, but it changes everything when you do." She smiled, glancing toward the door as snow fell outside. "Full circle," she whispered. The screen faded to black.